Welcome inside the Faithful to the Pod podcast, a podcast on your San Francisco 49ers, hosted by myself, Stephen Ellis, and of course joined by my good friend and co-host, Josh LaFont. Week one is here. It's just around the corner. It's this weekend, and that's what we're here to discuss. So we're going to preview this game, make our picks, and some different predictions regarding that. So let's go ahead and get started.
Are you familiar with the Crusades?
I'm going the throwback white 49ers.
Wow, it's 10?
And Ayuk will have a career year.
Do you want to trade Jimmy Garoppolo for 20th overall pick?
I think that any three of these teams could play in the Super Bowl.
I have two weapons: my arms, my legs, and my brain. Welcome to the 49 Yard Dash podcast. That thing's still new enough where it gets
still an all-time introduction. Man.
Absolutely. Man, I don't know about you, but I can't believe we're this close this weekend, week one in Chicago. The NFL's back. We're recording this on Tuesday evening. So yeah, Thursday this week is the first game, the opening game, the Bills and the Rams. That two juggernaut teams there, man. But 49ers Bears. How you feeling about this week? Just overall thoughts. Season beginning, week one. How you feeling?
I think the NFL season is always harder for me to gear up for. Of course, we're excited for the 49ers, but college football kind of does wet the bed in that regard because you just had games in week 0, which is week 1, and then you had games this week as we're recording, or this previous week, on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then we're recording on Tuesday, September 6th, and the final game of week 1 was Clemson, Georgia Tech on the 5th on Monday. So it's just football galore. So that's always kind of the initial introduction for me to the football season. Once you hit week 0 games, and then once you get the big dogs playing week 1, it just feels like a natural progression in the year for me. I don't always gear up for week 1. I'm ready for it. But at this point, it's just like, come on, baby, just give me football.
Yeah, I personally have a lot riding on this one because I've seen there's just Trey Lance, surprisingly, for someone who hasn't really even played much, it's got a lot of people a lot of haters, I'll say. I really do think so. A lot of people are expecting him to fall on his face and for Garoppolo to take over. You know, somebody Peter King, today said that he expects by week 7 Garoppolo will be the starter. And I saw somebody else, I can't remember his name, but he said by week 3 Garoppolo would be the starter. So I'm just eager to see Trey Lance show these guys what's up.
I know we're going to get into the preview too at the Bears, but it's just like, did you see the comments on Fields too? I think it was Darnell Mooney was talking about, he says he's going to, prove everything that everybody doubted him on, especially week 1, that team that passed on him. So they're going to have to pay a little bit of that. They're going to have to pay a little bit for that. All right.
Yeah.
Between Peter King and that crap. Oh my God.
Yeah, for real, man. I'm just ready for it to get started. I'm tired. Well, funny, we're about to spend, 30 minutes or whatever talking about it, but I'm kind of tired of talking about it. I just want to see it happen.
I'm extremely exhausted about talking about it. We talked about it last week ad nauseum, and I went for your neck when I didn't need to go for your neck because you weren't presenting your neck for me to go for. And if that is an analogy that makes sense, Jimmy Garoppolo should not be on the team. He is on the team. We'll see what happens with it.
Yeah.
He looked like crap, and the videos you saw earlier today, Grant Cohn's already talking about his footwork speed. That's exactly where we're at this point of the technical off season. I don't know what to tell you. If he trots out there and is warming up behind a line that features Trent Williams, I may shoot myself. At any point, even if it's mixed in with second-team offensive linemen, if Trent Williams features in that line, I'm done. Podcast's over. Forget it. I just can't handle it.
Barring injury, honestly, I'm really not worried about it. I'm really and truly not.
Yeah.
That's just me, though. But,
Yeah. One
man,
thing I would say, though,
sure.
that I want to air out on here that I was saving for you
Hmm.
so we can have something organic. We're talking about it over text, talking
Yeah.
about Trey Lance was annoyed.
Oh,
Steven
yeah.
doesn't necessarily agree that Trey Lance would be annoyed. I've been in this situation from an employer standpoint. I can easily see how he would be annoyed that Jimmy's back. I don't think there's a universe that exists that he's not even slightly aggravated that Jimmy's still on the team. No matter what relationship they have, you fired a guy in words only, and now he's back and working in the same department as you. I don't know how that wouldn't be the slightest bit awkward or an inconvenience to Trey.
Sure, and like I said, when we were texting about it, I think if Trey had the option, is Jimmy on this team, yes or no? I think he would say no. And I believe
think
that
any
when the
person would
news
say
first
no.
came about, I'm sure he was. He had his reservations and probably was annoyed. But I will say it was Albert Breer who reported that you sent, and since then he has actually taken it back. He basically admitted that he made it up. Um, what do you call it? He said, looking back, it was very, he said presumptuous, I think. Yeah, basically he was presuming or assuming these things. He didn't really have any sources on it. But again, I do think initially, I'm sure there was some irritation. I'm sure he'd rather Jimmy not be on. But now that it's here, now that I think the roles are very clear, I don't think he's worried about it, just like I'm not worried about it. And when I listen to him at the
Yeah.
podium, he doesn't sound worried about it. He doesn't sound like somebody who's worried about losing his job, or that there's even a quarterback competition. And Garoppolo talked about knowing your place and all that stuff. I think Trey knows he's the guy and he's not worried about it. That's all.
Yeah, no, I know he's the guy, and I know he knows he's the guy, and all this stuff about media is just pulling stuff out of thin air. It's just frustrating, being a Michigan fan, dealing with the Harbaugh, Ohio State crap every offseason, and here we are again, and then being a 49ers fan, you just deal with this quarterback stuff. It gets exhausting, and hopefully Trey Lance comes out week one, and we'll get into it here in a second.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully comes out week one against a below average defense and shuts up the haters on that regard.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think there's some key matchups in this game that I wanted to discuss.
Sure.
I wrote down 3 here that I think
Sure.
could be deciding factors. And then I have some keys to victory that are more like principles. But number 1, I think, is the obvious one. Nick Bosa rushing the passer against this offensive line. I think he's going to have a field day. And I think he could be the deciding factor in this game. The 49ers are a better team. They should win this game. And I'll get into some stuff on maybe if they did somehow lose, what that might look like. But Nick Bosa going against this offensive line, I think, could be game-wrecking type material. On Chicago's side, still on their offensive side, Darnell Mooney is their number 1. And Cole Kmet's, I think, a solid player, but really Darnell Mooney is the guy in that passing offense.
Yep.
Charvarius Ward, the cornerback signing of this offseason, put him on Darnell Mooney. Let's see how that matchup goes. I'm really curious to see that. And then last year when they played the Bears, the only reason it was close is really because of Justin Fields' legs. He was extending plays. He ran for a long touchdown. He had the spin move. It's a really nice-looking play. I put Fred Warner against Justin Fields, the quarterback spying back there. So those are the 3 ones that I'm keying in on. And I guess now that I look at it, it's all 49ers defense against the Bears offense, which is funny because the 49ers offense is what people have questions about. But those are my keys.
Yeah, no, I think I'm with you. I'd almost put Fred Warner on Cole Kmet as well, just because of linebacker. Tight end coverage, I don't think, obviously, with Jimmy being out of the game, I don't think he put Talanoa Hufanga in that situation.
Right.
Kmet's not necessarily a top 10 tight end, but he's definitely got that potential this year to kind of rise into that category. So he at least presents a challenge in the pass game. That's what he's known for more than anything, not necessarily a blocking threat. He's definitely more of a receiving tight end. So would like to see what matchup is going up against him. And then pretty much like you said, is the defensive strategy. How do you contain Justin Fields? That was always my knock on him, like we talked about, not to get back in his scouting report, but he definitely is better improvising than he is in the pocket, being a stationary quarterback. So how can you keep him in the pocket, and how can you speed up his progressions and still contain him in a tight area? That's one thing I'll be looking for too.
Absolutely. Off the top of your head, are there any like specific players maybe on the offense that you think could be key for the 49ers? Other than, Trey Lance.
Trey Lance. No, it's a tough one. Definitely Elijah Mitchell, just because having a starting running back who should, in theory, in this game, have some open running rooms with the threat of Trey Lance keeping it. My prediction for the first play of the game, if I can talk like a normal person, would be a read option with Trey Lance keeping it all the way, just to kind of present that early on as a threat at the very least, and then maybe you follow that up with kind of a fake read and then pass across the middle. But definitely Elijah Mitchell. How can he exploit some open run lanes with that running threat with Trey Lance back there now, not having to play behind Jimmy? And then also George Kittle. We've talked about it nauseum over this offseason, not just me and Steve, but plenty of other platforms, whether in word or voice, no matter which way you consume your media, have talked about George Kittle and the Trey Lance connection and how that definitely needs to be better this year than last year. So curious to see how much he gets targeted as well, because that's definitely something between a rock and a hard place right now with the whole Roquan Smith situation. Doesn't feel that defense is getting ready to rally around anything. So George Kittle could easily exploit them in the passing game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think George Kittle could be a big-time key offensively, and having that guy, such a reliable guy in the middle of the field, I think could be big time. Definitely.
Yep. I am also curious to see, I guess, if I had a third one, not that we asked for a third one, and I know you're about to move it on, but I am wondering how Debo actually performs in a game that's not a scrimmage against 49ers players or against third stringers. How does his speed hold up? Can he take the top off a defense? And more importantly, what does his usage look like against, in theory, an inferior team? Is it the same as we saw last year when they were going against inferior teams on that little bit of a run where he's still getting the ball out of the backfield, or is he relegated to strictly wide receiver plays?
Yeah, right. Some things that I have for keys to victory. One thing is limiting mistakes. And I thought about this because we just talked about Trey Lance, and obviously that would be directly tied to him. I think the 49ers are a significantly better team than Chicago. Really, that's clearly the first one for me is don't give the ball away. I think if you're the better team, if you play your game, get the run game going, do your thing, then you're going to be in really good shape. Play your game. Shanahan, this is all you, man. Just don't turn the ball over. That's definitely my first key.
No, that's definitely a good one, and that's always, it seems like when I'm writing my articles for the GBM Wolverine, it seems like that's always one that I have to try to not put in every week is limited mistakes, because it's one, especially when you're playing an inferior team. That's the way you let them back in. This isn't going to be a shootout, and it never would be with any of the Bears teams in the last 10 years since Cutler started going off the cliff. Definitely, that's a great one. Keeping Trey Lance's pocket clean, giving him some confidence early, not letting his quarterback clock getting sped up. That would be the one. So if you had to break it down, just my first one would be keeping his pocket clean. Yeah,
and that goes along with the third one that I wrote. It was limiting the penalties on offense. And the reason I wrote this one is because in the Arizona game last year, I believe they had 7 holding penalties in that game. Your offense cannot move the ball when you have 70 yards just of holding. Those are drive killers. We always talk about sacks being drive killers. Dude, a holding call it's essentially the same thing. A -10 yards. I know you get to keep the down, but 1st and 20, 2nd and 20, it's
Well,
hard to
just
do
think about it.
anything.
Just think about it. Let's say it's 1st and 10. Elijah Mitchell runs up the gut for 3 yards. You got a holding. Okay, we're back to 1st and 20. Well, let's say the next play you call is that same run and Elijah Mitchell gets 3 yards. Well, now you're not going on 2nd and 7. You're on 2nd and 17. So, like you talked about, that's a big drive killer. It might even be worse than a sack because it changes up your whole script. It changes up your
Yeah.
whole play calling dynamic. Changes everything up. You're not gonna be able to run the same stuff if you have a lot of early penalties. Hopefully, in the off season, we know we talked about it last year during that Arizona game or the post Arizona game podcast. The reason for those holding penalties is they're not used to having a mobile quarterback. So hopefully, we're going through this off season and everything. They're going to be used to the simple fact of, hey, Trey's going by me. I don't have to keep blocking. He's gone.
Mhm.
Hopefully we see that this year. My other one would be as well is we talked about turnovers. I don't want to rehash this stuff, but Brandon Ayuk stepping up into the role that he should be
Yes.
in. Being the primary receiver. Steve and I have talked about Debo plenty on and off this podcast. Whether or not he's the number one wide receiver this year on the team remains to be seen. Brandon Ayuk and Trey Lance have a special connection, and we
Mhm.
really want to see that exploited this year.
Absolutely.
Not this year in this game, especially this year, but
And this year
more
too.
specifically in this game. Yeah, but more specifically in this game. The Bears do not have a strong defense. This is a game where Ayuk should be running all over the field. Shanahan scheming him wide open, and as long as Trey Lance can deliver to Ayuk like he's proven he can, and workout videos in the games last year and all sorts
Mhm.
of avenues, this is a potential Brandon Ayuk coming out party, and that would just take such a load off the offense, especially going up against a subpar defense. To
Yeah.
have a guy like that who might not necessarily be doubled up. The Bears' defensive game plan probably is going to be George Kittle and then Debo in that order. And
Yeah.
then if you got that third guy doing work one-on-one situations, you can see how this game can get away from him pretty quick.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The other thing that I had written down, and this kind of goes with a path in which they could lose if this were to happen, was just containing that run game that I mentioned earlier. Because
Yeah.
again, last year, the only reason it was close is because Justin Fields was making plays with his legs. So try to contain that. I think that's where Fred Warner comes in. Hopefully, Ebicom and Drake Jackson, they're supposed to be the speed rushers. Hopefully they're doing well in that department and trying to keep Justin Fields in the pocket. Like you said, keep him in the pocket. He's playing his best when it's off script stuff, using his legs stuff. It's if you keep him in the pocket, the thing that he definitely still needs work at is reading the defense, going through reads, stuff like that. So it's the veteran quarterback stuff that Fields needs to work at. Keep him in the pocket, and your defense should do a lot better that way.
Yeah, one thing, this is probably obviously the last key to this game is one that's going to go into this season is seeing how DeMeco Ryans coaches up that third down defense. We saw the 49ers put a really good defense on the field last year with a lot of no-name guys outside of the initial stars, even Josh Norman made an appearance, Dante Johnson, all these guys who we railed on all year, Drake Kirkpatrick too. A lot of guys who produce because of the system. But one thing they didn't do necessarily was dial up third down blitzes to a level we saw Robert Saleh do to get that offense in a spot that they just couldn't cooperate. When you're going up against a second-year starter who doesn't have trust in his weapons, no matter what he tells you, Cole Kmet and Darnell Mooney are not top-tier wide receivers and tight ends. So it's not necessarily like he's relying on them for everything. This is one of the bottom 5 offensive lines in football, could easily be bottom 3. I want to see what DeMeco Ryans runs on third down because, like you talked about, in connection with his legs, the reason he made plays with his legs last year is 49ers just did kind of sit back in coverage and dared Fields to beat him through the air, but what they didn't account for was his legs. So I want to see some blitzes dialed up. I want to see Tono Hufanga coming in. I want to see this linebacker core running free on Fields on third down, even if they don't get home, at least speeding up his clock a little bit to get him flustered.
Yeah, Yeah, no, definitely so. So, again, like we mentioned, the 49ers are a better team. Um, I think it's going to be a rough year for the Bears. I have them actually at 4 wins this year. Meanwhile, I had the 49ers at 12 wins this year. The 49ers have an excellent roster. Um, the Bears are in a bad spot. They might have the worst offensive line in the league. They might have the worst pass catchers in the league. Not a good spot for Justin Fields. The 49ers should win this game,
Yep.
but if they were to lose this game, I think these are the reasons why.
All right.
One, Trey Lance turns the ball over. And I don't think this is going to happen, but I'm just saying if they were to lose, this is why. Trey Lance turns the ball over, or they let Justin Fields extend plays with his legs a lot. He's running all over the place. Or, just like the Arizona game, offensive line is committing penalties left and right. Those are the things, those are the only ways I can see the 49ers dropping this one.
The spread right now on ESPN is 7 for the Niners. That ties the next two biggest spreads in the league this next week. Colts over Texans by 7, and then the Ravens over the Jets. You're talking about 3 of the worst teams in football, the Bears, the Jets, and the Texans, and 3 teams who are expected to contend for their conference, and the Ravens, the Colts, and the Niners. So this is a game the Niners should easily win. What I don't want to see happen is Kyle Shanahan not adjusting. That would be my way. That would be my reason they lose, is because Kyle's trying to force Jimmy, or not force Jimmy, trying to force Trey into a Jimmy role, not letting him utilize his legs. I don't think that'll happen, but should it get into a situation where Shanahan's trying to take advantage of a weak Bears defense, not really a threat outside of Justin Fields on the Bears offense. Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet can't throw the ball or catch the ball if they can't get the ball. It would be a situation where we're not going to take the read options. We're going to run Elijah Mitchell up the gut. We're going to run Debo up the gut. And we're going to make Trey Lance sit back there and try to pick apart a defense that's sitting back in zone coverage, wanting him to beat him through the air. That would be the one situation. And then we're going into halftime, and it's an ugly score of like 10 to 7, 10 to 6 Niners. And nobody feels good about anything. We come out of the second half, Niners get the ball, and like they punt on the first possession of the third quarter. Something like that, where they come out with a bad game plan because they're trying to force a square peg in a round hole, and then they don't adjust after halftime. That would be the way that I would see them losing this game.
Right. Yeah. But obviously I'm expecting the 49ers to get this win. I expect them to start 1-0. When me and you went through our schedules, obviously we both had this as a W.
I've got the Bears at 2 wins, and this ain't one of them, buddy.
You have them at 2 wins?
I have them at 2 wins.
I
think
had them at 4, but I went back and forth with 3 and 4. They're just – it's not a good roster, and it's a first-year head coach, right? I mean –
a defensive-minded coach, first-year head coach.
For a really bad offense. Like –
This is a team that could be looking to make a fire sale at the trade deadline.
Yeah. If Justin Fields is good this year, I will be extremely impressed because the situation is not there for him at all right now.
Yeah, and you think about it, even if he is good this year, it's going to be because he's doing things an NFL quarterback shouldn't be doing, improvising and living off of it, which is a good skill to have. But that's the knock on Fields as a prototypical NFL quarterback who's being asked to deliver certain aspects of an offense. He hasn't shown that, at least in his rookie year at this point. Even Mac Jones has shown that more than probably anybody. But if he's just improvising and is having to run for his life and that's how he has a good year, that might even be worse for the guy just because of ingrained in bad habits. And the Bears are a team that you can get bad habits ingrained real quick.
Oh yeah, definitely. No, I don't think people realize how much a bad situation affects a young quarterback. Because, like, okay, I'm gonna bring up my guy. I loved Sam Darnold coming out. He was a USC guy. I'm a USC fan. I loved Sam Darnold, but I was aware that he had bad habits. At USC, he played under a bad coaching staff behind a bad offensive line. He was constantly making plays out of structure, and he looked really good. But in the NFL, where you got to sit in the pocket a lot of the times, read the defenses, make on-time, on-target throws all the time, he went to the Jets where, again, poor coaching, poor offensive line play, and he's, again, just trying to play hero ball all the time, which makes you more likely to turn over the ball, and he was already kind of prone to turn over the ball. Never had an opportunity to work out these bad habits. They only got worse and worse and worse, and now he doesn't even know how to play in structure at all.
Well, think about even from a more local situation. That's a great example of Darnold, but even think about Alex Smith. His first several years with the 49ers, he was just getting his butt was green by the time it was over, and it wasn't from crapping his pants. It was from the turf, and it was probably a combination of both. It wasn't until Jim Harbaugh came around, and even then, his confidence was so gone that what you had at that point was a bad Matt Stafford at the very best. But you even think about that, about all the talent he used and how great he was under Urban Meyer at Utah. And I know I say Urban Meyer, but he goes into a bad situation. And despite that talent, it scarred him for the rest of his career.
Yeah.
Never reached that Hall of Fame potential. And that's a guy who had all the makings, even more so than Sam Darnold, of doing that. So with Justin Fields too, like you're talking about bad situations, you hate it for the kid. I've never been a fan of his, but you never wish that on anybody.
Right.
And the Bears are a team. It's like, man, you could easily see him at the trade deadline if Darnell Mooney and or Cole Kmet are putting up numbers and they've got one win to their name or maybe none. It's like, hey, we can get a second-round pick for this guy. We'll see you. You're not a building block.
Right.
It's a tough situation to be in.
It is. It is. It definitely is. I hate it. How do you see this game going? What do you think's going to happen?
I think I think Niners are going to score on the first drive that they get the ball, whether they start the game with the ball, or they get it after the Bears punt. 17-3 at halftime. Niners take it away 35-13.
35-13.
35-13. Players of the game, offense, defense, and special teams. Yeah, I know, special teams. He doesn't have to be a kicker or punter either. Offensive player of the game, I will go Brandon Ayuk. Thinks this is going to be his coming out party. People are going to be like, oh, why did the Niners pay Deebo Samuel? This is a perfect game for him. Defense, Talanoa Hufanga, give him a couple sacks. Think he can get dialed up here in some third down packages like we're talking about. And then special teams, I will give it to Danny Gray and kickoff return. Could see him not necessarily housing one, but could see him taking one, at least 30, 40 yards, maybe close to midfield a couple times during the game. Bears special teams are even more worse than their offense. So this is a perfect opportunity for the late round wide receiver to make a name for himself in the house that Devin Hester built.
That's right, man. That's right. I like it. I'm going to say I like your halftime score too. I like to add it in. I agree. I think the 49ers are going to come out. They're going to make a statement early. I think they're going to establish the run game. I think Trey Lance is going to look sharp early, and I think they're going to score early. I will go here. I'll say this. Going into the fourth, it'll be 24-10.
All right.
Both teams will score late touchdowns, and it'll be 31-17. But not, even though it's a 2-touchdown game, it being even a little bit not even quite as close as the score looks. I think the 49ers are going to come out and make a statement. And I think this is going to be a really good team. I'm excited for it. My offensive player of the game, I actually wrote down Brandon Ayuk, so I'm going to change it.
No, it's all right. Hey, if that's who you think it is, baby, that's great.
I do think they're going to come out and establish their connection, but I'll go George Kittle. You know, they kept Roquan Smith, but Roquan Smith didn't want to be there, so he's not going to be totally invested. So, yeah.
Yeah. I will say don't expect, and Steve drafted Trey Lance in one of our fantasy leagues. I didn't care for that pick. I believe so. You did, didn't you?
You didn't care for it, you say?
I didn't care for it, and I'll tell you why. Trey Lance isn't going to hit his stride until after the bye week. Don't expect huge numbers from him this week or the next couple of weeks. A stat line of like 15 for 23, 180 yards passing, two
I can see it.
touchdowns, two touchdowns to the air, maybe one touchdown
give
to
me
the air
Yeah,
with
just
one
give me
rushing.
one rushing
What we
touchdown.
want is the incompletions to be in a position where the receiver is having a chance to make a play.
Mhm.
He can't be missing guys across the middle, overthrowing deep shots. We'll maybe give him one deep shot to miss, but those misses need to be on 50-50 balls. Those need to be contested plays to Debo and Ayuk down the field, to Kittle on a seam route. We want to see him make good decisions, no matter what the stat line says, and don't expect a huge game for that reason. Shanahan's not going to put the weight of the world, and I know I said that in my reason why the Niners might lose, but I can't see a scenario where that happens, where Shanahan puts everything on him. This is going to be a game to ease him in. They're going to lean on Mitchell. They're going to lean on the run game.
Yeah.
You're going to utilize Trey Lance's threat to run to open everything else up. And I would be surprised, like I say, to see him throw for more than 200 yards, for rush them more than 50. This is going to be kind of an easing in game. A couple touchdowns total through the air and on the ground.
So you think I should start Kirk Cousins over Trey Lance week 1?
I think you're screwed either way with your quarterback situation, buddy.
I'll be all right.
No,
I'll be all right.
I do think, though, kind of looking ahead, once we get to the bye week, you let Trey Lance settle in. You spend that bye week refining some of the things that he needs to finish up. And plus, too, after this game, it's not like you wait till the bye week to improve. You're kind of buttoning that stuff up. And you see this all the time in college football, especially more than the NFL, where a first-year starter throws for less than 100 yards. You're like, man, this guy sucks. And then by the 10th game of the year, you're rolling into close to bowl season, fighting for a conference championship berth. They're throwing 250, 300, 350 yards. The offense is on their back. It takes a while to ease into it. And especially in the situation with Trey Lance, it's going to be a slow build to what we see towards the end of the year. Well, week 18, Lance is going to look different than week 1.
Yeah, man. That's it's going to be playoff time in fantasy football. I need him for the playoffs, man. My running backs will carry me to the playoffs, and then I'll be good.
There you go, buddy. There you go.
So now it seems like the best time to reveal this to you. That our buddy Luke. What time did we start this podcast? Probably about 8:50 my time, maybe something like that.
Sure.
He texted me at 8:45 and said, "Bro," I said, "Yes." He said, "Can you start my draft for me?" I said, "What?" He said, "It's at 9:00 and I can't get there yet." So I have been doing a draft this whole time for Luke.
What is Luke's team? Reveal it to the audience here before we wrap it up.
I had the 7th pick. Justin Jefferson was available, so I picked Justin Jefferson. Well, I'll tell you what, there are some homers in this league. You know who went first overall?
Mac Jones.
Derrick Henry.
Derrick
Henry went first. Najee Harris went really high too.
Good Lord.
Yeah. So yeah, there's some dang homers in this league for sure. This is interesting. But so far, I got Justin Jefferson, Alvin Kamara, T. Higgins, Kyle Pitts, and Travis Etienne. So, yeah.
That's not bad. Etienne's a sleeper guy for me. I didn't have the balls to pick him. But, he was there a couple times. There's some other intriguing options. I think I picked Pierce over him once and took J.K. Dobbins over him in another league. I think he can kind of be a sleepy candidate this year, depending on how Peterson uses him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. But, yeah, this has been interesting.
Heck of an episode. Go Niners. 35-13 Niners. Steve, what's your prediction?
You said 35-13. I said 31-17. So pretty close.
31-17. 1-0 rolling into week 2.
1-0. Let's do it. Next week, man, we're going to be back to cover. Obviously, I know we got the fact of the week, but we're going to be covering a 49ers win, hopefully. And who's their week 2 opponent again?
We're about to find out.
I forgot. It's the Seahawks.
This is the Seahawks. 49ers are an early 9-point favorite in that game, a home favorite. It's a 4:05 kick. So,
by the way,
it'll be the late Fox kick.
I'm no betting man, but if I were, this -7 against the Bears, hit the
hammer
over. Hit the over.
Hammer the
Absolutely.
over. Hammer the over.
Absolutely, man.
Hammer the over. I'd be curious here before we wrap up. What is the total points? Over-unders at 41.5. 49ers are favored by 7. Man, I got to think. Talking 35-13, I wouldn't be shocked 49ers hit 40 points in this game.
That's a 24-17 game, isn't it? Okay.
24-17 is what they're predicting.
Yeah, okay. Interesting.
28-14. 24-17.
Real quick before the fact of the week, who do you got between the Bills and the Rams this Thursday?
Bills.
Me too, Bills.
Josh Allen.
Bills.
Josh Allen domination.
I agree.
Bills Mafia, baby.
Bills Mafia all day.
Throw the next guinea you see right through a table.
Absolutely. It's Josh Allen year this year. I think,
Talk about the gabagool and then throw him through the table.
Okay, bring him the gabagool. All right, man, take us home. Here we go.
You're familiar with golf, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You've held a golf ball before, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Have you ever felt a golf ball? Felt the dimples on it? Felt the ridges in it?
Sure.
You ever counted them?
Counted them?
Yes. Have you ever counted the dimples on a golf ball?
No,
336 would be the number that you would find, my friend, is the
Seriously?
common average of a PGA regulation golf ball. 336 dimples on a regulation PGA golf ball.
I'm not going to lie. I wouldn't have guessed nearly that high.
I've never been good at guessing how many M&Ms are in the jar, and I was a really fat kid, so I would be just as bad at that game as well.
Real quick, funny story before we go. When I was in kindergarten, early in elementary school,
try to keep it above board without the race.
I had a teacher that did that every week at a jar, and it was different objects. M&Ms one week, gumballs another week, whatever. And I finally got it right when it was, I think it was like jelly beans, and I'm not really a jelly bean person. And on my way out, when I was taking it home, I dropped the jar and it broke. Yeah, it's pretty embarrassing.
Nice job securing the rock, JaMychal Hasty. That's why you're
still
no
got the
longer on
same
the team.
hands.
Yeah. Butterfingers.
Okay.
Good episode, man. Nice to be
Absolutely.
rebranded and talking about a new season.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward to it. Let's start with a win. 49ers, 1-0. We'll be back to cover it and then preview Seattle. Maybe we can get Luke to join soon. But for now, this is the Faithful to the Pod podcast. Still hard for me to not say the old name. I'm Steven. That's Josh. Peace out, everybody.
Go Niners.